The structure of systematic racism was a design. It wasn't just a thing that just kind of floated up and happened organically. No, it was designed to work, and it's working very efficiently.
Even if the drawback is that Google can then use that to do more advertising to me. I put up with that because the benefit is that I have a timeline of where I've been, exactly. And there's almost like no way that they can say, no, you were here.
I feel that in order for this to change from a moment to a movement, it requires effort even when it's hard.
And, since that has happened, I have, shown up to all spaces being my true self. I don't feel the need that I have to straighten my hair or, make it blonde or super light to fit in the space anymore. And I think by doing that, I'm encouraging other Black women who are also aspiring to be in the marketing industry, letting them know that you can be yourself and you don't need to assimilate or quote unquote whiten yourself to fit in these spaces.
Welcome to Anatomy of a Strategy. I'm Stephanie Forster.
And I'm Tara Hunt.
And if you're new to this podcast, Anatomy of a Strategy is a marketing podcast that explores the hidden psychology and behaviors that drive marketing strategies. Like we've said before, it's not about marketing per se.
Nope, it is not. And Steph?
Yes?
We're taking Anatomy of a Strategy into a deep multi-episode exploration of something that people may not think about, or at least they may be thinking about recently, but we want to keep them thinking about it even more.
Exactly. We wanted to switch things up a bit, given everything that's going on right at this moment, which is a lot and needs to be addressed.
2020 has been quite a, what would you say, an upheaval of sorts? I find it more than ironic that so many things have come so sharply into view into 2020. I'm, of course, mostly referring to the killing of George Floyd and the resulting increase of support for Black Lives Matter. Right now, white people, present company included, are finally talking about these issues in a way that goes beyond the usual performative allyship.
Mm-hmm. And though there's been a steady growth in support for the issues that are at the forefront of the current Black Lives Matter movement, like defunding the police and reparations, I don't think I've ever seen these discussions go as mainstream as they are right now.
We have yet to witness how much this is going to affect everything around us, but I'm hopeful that this change will be permanent.
And I'm wondering if we should probably address why we, two white women, are doing this. I mean, what on earth do we know about what's going on?
Yeah, honestly, we don't. But that's why it's up to us to do our homework. And since our audience is largely white, we're assuming, we are in a unique position to share that work we're doing so that it helps influence others, you listening, positively. In fact, the whole impetus behind us pursuing this came about because I was at a workshop with Karlyn Percil, a brilliant diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, and she called me out.
Whew, that must have been embarrassing. What did she call you out for?
Well, as you know, and the team knows, diversity, equity, inclusion has been a huge priority for me and us for many years now. We go out of our way to recruit and grow our Black and other visible minority team members. We reach out to find Black and other underrepresented writers, journalists, speakers, and consultants to hire for projects, and we do work internally to create an inclusive environment. However, what I haven't really done over the years is to talk about this openly.
Yeah, I mean, I find it uncomfortable to talk about too, and it feels like we're almost congratulating ourselves for doing the right thing.
Exactly. It's really uncomfortable. But as Karlyn pointed out, this discomfort is white fragility in action. I keep from speaking up about what we're doing because I'm afraid of being criticized or even sounding preachy. She challenged me, saying that I needed to use my influence and our audience to amplify Black voices and to call out our industry.
Yeah, and our industry is probably the most guilty of perpetuating negative stereotypes and exploiting biases.
So guilty. And a large part of this is because of the overall whiteness of those who are making decisions. I was poking around and found the following information in Adweek. Listen to this. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, people who identify as Black account for only 5% of those working in advertising, public relations, and related sectors.
Yeah, wow. And there was a call for the industry to report on their diversity numbers, and They weren't so great. So in the US, where nearly 21,000 Publicis employees have self-reported their ethnicity, 5.4% of its workforce is Black. And this includes 8% in junior roles, 4.6% in mid-level positions, and 1.9% at the senior leadership level. I will repeat that. 1.9% at the senior leadership level.
Oh, no wonder a group of Black agency professionals and owners led by Nathan Young of Periscope Group and Bennett D. Bennett of Aerialist wrote an open letter demanding a meaningful change to these numbers. They also formed an organization called 600 and Rising, which is called the first organization solely dedicated to the advocacy and advancement of Black advertising employees.
That's pretty incredible. And we watched the recording of the Allyship in Action Summit that originally took place on June 18th and was live streamed on YouTube.
I don't think I've seen a more awesome production, frankly.
Yeah, it was great. We'll put the link in the show notes for sure.
All of this is to say we're fully committed to exploring this topic. After speaking to Karlyn, I started to reach out to Black professionals in marketing that I've met or known for many years. And I was actually a little hesitant at first.
And why is that, Tara? Why were you hesitant?
Well, I thought that some of them might be offended that I just reached out all of a sudden. I've heard so many stories about white people texting their Black friends with apologies and how annoying that is.
So what was the response, though?
Well, here's the thing. Not only was everyone I reached out to happy to hear from me and to join us on the podcast, they were delighted that I showed that I cared. In my own making it all about me world, I assumed that I would look idiotic for pursuing this, but that's just not the case. It turns out every Black person that I know has lots to say on this matter, and they really haven't been asked to voice it. So they were really happy.
Yeah, which is kind of ridiculous that no one's asked them to talk about it before, right?
It is, but seeing what we see now, it's pretty clear that these discussions need to come out into the open. More white people need to do the work and share this work with and encourage other white people to do it as well.
Definitely. And it's just not enough to post a Black square on Instagram and call it a day.
Yeah, that's one of the issues. Performative allyship has been incredibly damaging over the years. When it's trendy and in the news cycle, everyone is chanting, Black Lives Matter. But then we all move on and everything goes back to the way it was before.
Yeah, and you can see this play out on Instagram too. Like there's a bunch of regular photos, then a Black square, and then a bunch of more regular photos filled with white people.
Yeah, and I'm really embarrassed to say, but I know my Instagram is guilty of this too. It's not just Instagram though. That's just the obvious visual place.
Yeah, totally. And there are a lot of not so obvious places we're going to explore with this series. So we actually had an incredible discussion about data and racism with Ian Forster. No relation. We just have a similar last name. But we even joked that I misspell our last name.
Yeah, that discussion totally blew my mind. And yes, we discussed how data is being used to racially profile, but that's not the only way that data intersects with racism. You'll have to stay tuned to listen, but wow.
Mm-hmm. And our first episode will be an interview with the brilliant Cher Jones, a social media trainer for corporate companies and entrepreneurs, as well as a brand expert. And she's also a LinkedIn influencer, and she makes amazing videos on the platform. And we talked a lot about code switching and how professionalism is just another way to assert white supremacy, and you won't want to miss that one.
No, you won't. And I could listen to Cher talk for days. We also spoke with Danica Nelson, who demonstrates the importance of representation in her story about seeing Bozoma St. John, the newly appointed CMO of Netflix, walk on stage during an Apple event years ago and being, and this is to quote, Danica, unapologetically and proudly Black. This was so important in influencing Danica's own trajectory.
It was so good. Her story about Liberty Leave has me thinking quite a bit. And we also talked to Siobhan Cherry, who is the director of community and partnerships at Spark Co-working in Baltimore, soon to be in Kansas City. And Baltimore is a fascinating city, actually, with 63.7% Black residents. So she's running a community for entrepreneurs, which doesn't have the same ratios, but she's aiming for it. And she's a trained designer and also talks about how cities like Baltimore are actually designed to discriminate.
Yeah, these conversations, they shouldn't be, but they have been incredibly eye-opening. And we have more conversations coming up with brilliant marketers such as Karima Catherine Gundayam, who you've heard on this podcast before, Irene Mukasa, a former director of communications at National PR, who's now running communications and brand at a tech software firm, PatSnap.
And we're also scheduling conversations with Roberto Blake, YouTube marketing expert who has nearly 500,000 subscribers, Baratunde Thurston, a comedian and online personality whose book, How to Be Black, was a bestseller many years ago, Justin Norman, SVP, creative director at Donor, Sally Cherry, Shervon's super geeky mom who works in virtual worlds and healthcare communications, and many more.
Yeah, we're still booking guests, so if you're interested or know someone else who we should be talking with, let us know. To note, we're also interested in talking with Indigenous marketing professionals in Canada, the US, and beyond.
Mm-hmm. And this series will go on as long as it needs to in order to get the full picture of how marketing, as an industry, an institution, and as a practice, contributes to the perpetuation of white supremacy and anti-Black racism.
And because marketing is a multifaceted, broad umbrella of an industry, we're interested in speaking with multifaceted marketing types. This means market research, SEO, package design, events, influencer marketing, PR, and more.
Yeah, and we're not sure what the outcome is really going to be, or even if we'll even come to a grand conclusion. And I think that's okay. What we do know is that these conversations are important to keep alive beyond the news cycle.
Yeah, marketing is an industry that drives change. It drives perception. It affects behavior. It plants ideas. What ideas are we planting? What perceptions are we perpetuating? Which behaviors are we encouraging? Are we using our powers for good or for evil? And why do we move mountains to sell a beverage but stop short at performative allyship to stop anti-Black racism?
Mm-hmm. With great power comes great responsibilities. So we're aiming to answer these questions and see if we can create more of a sustained conversation around these issues going forward.
This is going to be uncomfortable at times. I 100% know it will be. Already, I've cringed many times while speaking to our guests, seeing myself in some of the things that they're talking about. But I always have to step back and remind myself, this isn't about me. It's not about my white fragility.
Yeah, it's about making our industry and our worlds work for everyone. So it's not just a good thing or a right thing to do. It's going to make, hopefully, for better outcomes for everyone overall.
Gosh, we sound like we're out to change the world, right, Steph?
Well, maybe just the marketing world, but
it sounds like a good start.
Yeah, so join us by subscribing to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow our Twitter account at Anatomy of a Strat.
Share with friends, send us messages, criticisms, and more. You can find me at Miss Rogue, MISSROGUE.
And you can find me at Stephanie F. That's STEFANIF.
We run Truly Inc., a digital strategy consulting firm in Toronto, and just launched our marketing community and platform, Flywheel. That's with a PH.
So many interesting spellings happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we look forward to your feedback.
Yeah. Talk soon.